Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. News that I think all of us were sort of anticipating. I briefly considered going live on late Wednesday, but college hoops was kind of starting up. Everybody else was going live. And bluntly, I don't think anybody was that surprised that Jim Harbaugh officially left for the NFL. And again, it does become official late Wednesday into Thursday. And so when I think about Jim Harbaugh, now the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, I think there are three emotions that come to mind for me. And I want to kind of go ahead and break them all down right now. The first one, I'm excited to see what he does with the Los Angeles Chargers because I think they're a franchise that has been itching and dying for a guy like him. I'm sad for college football, but ultimately what I would say is I think I speak for a lot of people watching, listening on podcasts. I'm not all that surprised. So I want to talk about those emotions. I actually want to start backwards. And let me say this. Do I speak for everybody when I say I am not surprised at all that Jim Harbaugh is now officially in the NFL? Listen, you could go back to podcast episodes of this podcast from January of 2023, a year ago. I said, listen, this really feels like the last dance at Michigan for Jim Harbaugh to me. This was before all the NCAA stuff, the Burgergate, the Connor Stallions, whatever. But if you go back really 2 years, if you remember the winter of 2022, that was after the first Big Ten championship. Jim Harbaugh is interviewing for multiple NFL jobs. He even got so far as to interview with the Minnesota Vikings on National Signing Day. That one was kind of embarrassing because I think he went in thinking he was going to get the job, and everybody kind of said like they already had Kevin O'Connell kind of signed, sealed, and delivered. They were waiting for the Rams to lose in the playoffs, whatever. I bring it up because last year he sort of kind of did the NFL interview thing. But then if you paid attention, it was really about a week in. He did a few Zooms with Carolina, with Denver, but he pulled out, and it was really kind of about this upcoming season. He had a veteran team full of guys that had been there for 2 or 3 years, had won multiple Big Ten championships. And I talked to people who kind of knew Jim Harbaugh at the time that were like, dude, he knows that this is his best team ever. And so really, I think it was always building towards this. I don't really think the NCAA stuff mattered all that much to him and to this decision. And I think ultimately he was going to pretty much probably go one way or the other, whether they won a championship or not. I think the championship makes it easy, but I think he was going to go one way or another. And really, I thought it was interesting. If you kind of read the tea leaves over the last couple of weeks, even though nothing was official, to me, it felt like you could kind of see this coming even as the process played itself out. First of all, it's important to note, like, he has had that contract on his desk for Michigan since before Christmas. $12.5 million a year, highest paid coach in college football. And he was basically not signing it so that he could go through the process of going through NFL interviews and seeing what jobs were for him. Really, over the last couple days, I thought there were three key things that happened, in my opinion, that made it very clear that this was going to happen. He was going to go to the NFL. It was just a matter of which job, which ones are going to open, which ones are going to interest him, etc. The first thing was about probably 2.5 weeks ago. It was right before the deadline for NFL declarations for the NFL draft. And why I bring it up is because I saw an interview with a kid named Will Johnson that I thought was very interesting, okay? So Will Johnson is a cornerback that was on this Michigan team, sophomore, so he's not able to go pro, but this was a 5-star kid. He'll be a first-round pick next year, not this year. And he did an interview, and they kind of asked him at the end. I thought they asked him a very interesting question. They kind of said, Will, they said, what they basically said was not, do you think Jim Harbaugh is going to go? Not, do you think JJ McCarthy is going to go? But they asked him a question that was basically like this. They said, we're not going to ask you what you know, but do you already know if a decision has been made by Jim Harbaugh about his future and JJ McCarthy about his future as well? And this kid, Will Johnson, he was doing a radio interview in Detroit somewhere there. He goes, yeah, we kind of know what's going on. And the way he answered, it was kind of like, oh, okay, they have been made aware. Their head coach is not coming back. Their quarterback is not coming back. I do think when JJ McCarthy also made the announcement that he was going pro, didn't really feel like it was a tough decision for him. Now, I think there were a lot of people that thought maybe this is a kid that's going to end up coming back to play college football next year. He's not a definite first-round pick. Maybe he decides to return. I think when J.J. McCarthy made that decision, it made it easier for Harbaugh. And then ultimately, I thought this was an interesting note from Wednesday before he accepted the Chargers job. There was a rumor and there was a report that he was going back to Atlanta to interview for a second time with the Falcons. And that to me did not feel like a Jim Harbaugh wants the Falcons job. He had been with the Chargers the day before on Tuesday. You saw the reports, haggling over contracts and staffing and GM and this and that. And when I saw that he was going back for a second interview with Atlanta, what that said to me, I even tweeted it out. I said something to the effect of like, this is a guy that is trying to play up his negotiating leverage. He is basically sitting there saying like, you know what? I'm not waiting around for you guys forever. If you guys want me, come get me, come sign me. But I ain't waiting around forever to go ahead and sign with you. So Jim Harbaugh does go to the NFL. I think from the two perspectives that I mentioned earlier, one, from the college football perspective, guys, I mean, I'm sad, right? Like if you're watching this show, if you listen to this show, you obviously love college football like I do. And we all love the NFL and we all watch the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. But from the college football perspective, like I am going to miss this guy. It's easy to forget, but first of all, he's one of the few guys that I truly believe is like genuinely polarizing. Like some guys are pseudo polarizing for college football fans. Like James Franklin is sort of polarizing for college football fans, maybe a Lincoln Riley, but like on a national scale, I don't think that many people really care that much about James Franklin. Well, everybody had an opinion about Jim Harbaugh. And I will say, like, he was fun to cover. He did what he wanted. He said what he wanted. He was genuinely himself. You go back to some of those early days at Michigan, some of the stuff that he pulled, like remember the satellite camps, the signing of the stars when he would bring in all these high profile people on National Signing Day for a national, he was just awesome to cover. He was really fun. I think he was good for the Big Ten. It's easy to forget now because Michigan just won a national championship. Ohio State won a national championship under Urban Meyer. The Big Ten was in a very bad spot about 8, 10, 12 years ago as he was starting, basically as he was starting to come back. Urban Meyer was settled, but Penn State was kind of going through their stuff. Bill O'Brien into James Franklin. And so Harbaugh comes in. He's a lightning rod. He's interesting. He wins right away. And again, he was a reason to tune into the Big Ten, even if you're an SEC fan and you really don't care. Can't tell you how many times over the last couple of years when Big Noon kickoff didn't have a marquee game at noon. They just put Michigan in. Michigan, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Michigan, Maryland, whatever. Who cares? Put Harbaugh in. He matters. He was obviously great for the Ohio State rivalry. I know I'm not the first person to say this, but biggest winner on probably Wednesday, I think maybe even more than the Los Angeles Chargers, was Ryan Day. I really believe that Jim Harbaugh had Ryan Day shook, and I think Ryan Day, one, he used Michigan as motivation this offseason, but now I think he's set to take back control of that rivalry. We'll see about the conference. Oregon and Washington are coming in. USC should be better. Oregon's going to be really good next year, but I think Ohio State's set to take back that rivalry, whatever. Finally, though, let me also say this. I'm bummed as a college football fan. But on the flip side, let me also say that as somebody who both lives in Los Angeles and loves watching the NFL and consuming the NFL, I do think this is pretty cool. First of all, let me say this. I give the Chargers a ton of credit, okay? Because the Chargers, listen, we've talked about them before, and I'll be honest, and this is where I was wrong. And if we end up doing Aaron right, Aaron wrong at the end of the show, like I got to own this. But when I go back and I look at the Chargers, when that job opened up, I said, listen, I know everybody thinks Harbaugh's going there, but they were paying Brandon Staley $4 million a year when they fired him. And I said, Harbaugh has a contract on his desk for $12.5 million. Are the Chargers really going to triple their coaching salary? Well, they did. And so I give them credit. Listen, I live in Los Angeles. It's a kind of a cliche talking point, but I think it's a correct talking point, is that at the end of the day, Los Angeles is a crowded market. And I remember even talking about this when the USC job opened up a few years ago with Clay Helton. And I had gone to a Rams game that first season that SoFi Stadium opened. I said, look, the NFL is coming to LA. And if USC doesn't get the right head coach, I think USC is going to be in trouble. And I think the Chargers were in this same position. I give them credit because you look at everything going on in LA right now. Dodgers spent what, like $1 billion in free agent money this offseason. USC, say what you want about Lincoln Riley. Is he the right guy? Is he not? They're interesting. People care. People go to the games. The Rams are always good. The Lakers are always good. And so the Chargers could not afford not to take a big swing. But why I like this, why I'm excited, why I do think this is pretty cool is because ultimately what I love about this is you are hiring the safest bet. I think even a safer bet than Bill Belichick. And what I like about it is the Chargers are basically pushing all their chips in the middle and saying this. Listen, are we definitely going to win a Super Bowl? There's no guarantee. Is Justin Herbert definitely going to get to that elite level? We don't know. There's no guarantee. But what you're doing is you're putting yourself in the best position to have the highest level of possible success. And it's funny, right? Like if you listen to this show, you know, over the last couple months, last couple weeks, really, what have I been frustrated about with the Dallas Cowboys, with the Buffalo Bills? It is the fact that those two teams clearly do not have the right person, and they instead decide to run it back. Oh, we'll just figure it out. Oh, we'll see what happens. Oh, we'll see this. Oh, we'll see that. It's like, no. Mike McCarthy is not the guy. We have enough proof. Mike McCarthy is not the answer in Dallas. You can only lose in embarrassing fashion in the playoffs so many times before we know he's not the guy. Buffalo, I'm sorry. I'm sure Sean McDermott is a nice guy outside of the weird references that he's making in pregame speeches. You lose to the freaking Chiefs every single year. At some point, you got to move on. And so I'm frustrated with those teams because it's like the answer is right in front of you. Or the answer is that guy is not the answer and you refuse to make a move. So that's why I give the Chargers credit. I don't know if it's going to work, but if it ever does, this is the guy that is going to get them in the best position to do it. And so listen, this isn't an NFL podcast. I'm not going to break down the depth chart. You know about Justin Herbert. You know about Joey Bosa. You know about Derwin James. I don't know who's staying. I don't know who's going. But what I do know, that is a team with a lot of talent. And so I'm curious to see what they do. They have a top 10 pick, a lot of speculation on you get Justin Herbert another weapon. Is it Brock Bowers? Is it Malik Neighbors? Is it one of the top wide receivers? I don't know. But what I will say is, Harbaugh is off to the NFL. I think, like I said, to lead the segment, I am not that surprised. I am a little sad, though. I mean, as a college football guy, you have to be a little bit sad just thinking about what this guy meant to the sport, how good he was for the sport, how much fun he was to be around. And listen, we can all sit here and say, oh, it's whatever. It's college football. Michigan's going to be just fine. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that. Really quickly, by the way, I don't think it's super cliche to say this. I think it feels pretty obvious. But to me, I think the easy answer, you got to go get Sharon Moore. And I don't, we're recording here again. It's about 7:15 Eastern time on 7:15 Eastern time on Thursday night. No official announcement has been made, at least not since we started recording. We'll see if anything else interesting happens. But listen, to me, that's the guy. The bottom line is you have known for weeks that Jim Harbaugh is going to pursue NFL opportunities. You have known for weeks that you are probably going to have to replace him. And I would hope that Ward Manuel, the AD at Michigan, has done his homework. Like you shouldn't, like the point I'm trying to make, you shouldn't be right now trying to figure out if Brian Kelly is interested in the job. You should not be right now trying to figure out if Chris Kleiman, the head coach at Kansas State, is interested right now. You should have done that homework weeks ago, and you should know right now, is Sharon Moore going to be your next head coach or not? My obvious thought is that he probably should be, and it's for all the cliche reasons that every other person that has a microphone that cares about college football has told you. We know what happens in this era. We know the talent that is already in that building, and we just saw what happened to Alabama when Alabama made the decision not to, when Nick Saban decided to retire. And once Nick Saban decided to retire and they decided to go outside of the family, there wasn't a logical replacement. What ends up happening, the roster gets fractured, roster gets broken up, whatever. So I would suspect Sharon Moore would be the guy. I would suspect they already kind of have an idea of if a Brian Kelly will take the job, if a Lance Leipold will take the job. I would think by the time you listen to this, I think we are probably going to have an answer one way or another. If Sharon Moore is the next head coach at Michigan, I would assume it happens before the end of the weekend. Listen, you let it go into the weekend.